Welcome to Calaveras Behind the Badge, where our commitment to community engagement, transparency, and open dialogue takes center stage. I'm Greg Stark, Lieutenant with the Calaveras County Sheriff's Office, Public Information Officer, and your host as we explore challenges we face and the role of law enforcement. So whether you're tuning in during your morning commute, at home, or on a hike through our beautiful county, we're glad to have you with us, and let's get started. In today's episode, we're diving into the Calaveras County Sheriff's Office recruiting efforts with Sheriff Rachelle Whiting. Welcome, Sheriff.
Hi, Lieutenant Stark. Thanks for having me. You finally got me on the podcast.
It's been a long journey, but we are absolutely here. To get started, I think it's important that the listeners know a little bit more about our guests. I know you've been a sheriff for quite a while and in the county for even longer as growing up in the community, but maybe share a little bit about your background, early life, maybe some formal education for those who don't know.
So I am fifth generation Calaveras County. I did grow up here, actually just up Mountain Ranch Road, a couple miles outside of San Andres. I went to San Andres Elementary, Toyon Middle School. I am a graduate of Calaveras High School. I have four siblings, three brothers and a sister. Three of my siblings still live in the county, so this is going to probably be shocking to you, but I was not a girly girl growing up in the dirt in Calaveras County. I prefer G.I. Joes versus Barbie, so my little brother and I would have little G.I. Joe wars in the dirt. I rode motorcycle dirt bikes. I love hiking, mountain biking around our county when I was a kid. And then growing up, we all did 4-H all the way through high school. Mm-hmm. I tried raising lambs a couple years. I just really didn't like it, so I switched to pigs and showed them and sold them at our county fair. So that's why 4-H, FFA, our independent exhibitor programs, they're all near and dear to me because I lived out at the fair like a lot of our ag families do. And then sports-wise, as a kid, I played softball. And I played soccer for years in our local CYSL program. And then I transitioned to volleyball all through high school. I've been a swimmer my whole life. I love competitive swimming in high school. I lifeguarded at the CHS pool every summer, taught swim lessons, and I even helped coach the summer youth swim team for several years here in San Andres. And then I worked at my mom's preschool after school. So then when I graduated, I was like a lot of our kids growing up here, like, see ya, Calaveras. I'm never coming back. I'm moving out of here. So I moved down to San Diego. I attended San Diego State University, and that's where I got my bachelor's degree in business management.
It's good to have roots in the county and growing up here and knowing, the ebb and flow and the feel of the community and, what's normal and what's not. I'm sure that carries over into your decision making and, all through your career as a deputy all the way up through the ranks. It's good to have that heartbeat of the community when you're either patrolling or interacting with them. And as far as working with your mom's daycare, I was a graduate of Sunshine also. Yeah. So I'm fond memories of that place driving by.
I think being a preschool worker and herding kids around and, having the patience that you need to do that definitely carried over and is a benefit in being a law enforcement officer. And when I left, you want to get out in the world, and I'm glad I moved to San Diego. And it was just, I loved it there. I took surfing, as an elective in college, and I love the city, but city life overall just wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. And as I was starting to get towards the end of college and thinking about what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go at that point, I just realized like how good we have it here growing up in a rural environment and the community that looks out for each other. And that's where I decided I wanted to move back, be closer to a lot of my family and some of my friends that are still here, and just that drive for that small community atmosphere. And so that's why I chose to move back to Calaveras.
That's a really good perspective where you have the rural and then you went to the big city and then you found out exactly what you wanted. Some people do enjoy the city, but you found out that, the rural environment, the small town atmosphere is really a special thing that some people really cherish.
Absolutely.
So having those different experiences, moving away and, getting your education and coming back, what caused you or what inspired you to join the sheriff's office?
So when I went into college, I was actually pre-med, and I was thinking maybe I wanted to be a doctor. And then I quickly realized that's a lot of biology, and I just knew I wasn't going to make it through all the preliminary hoops. I mean, some people are awesome at that, and I could tell right away within the first semester that wasn't the direction I was going to go. So, plus I have an uncle who was an ATF agent at the time. I always thought he was the coolest guy with the coolest job. So I did some research in the 90s. The FBI wanted new agents with accounting degrees. You know, it was all white-collar crime and numbers back then. So I switched my degree to business. And then around my junior year in college, I got a job on campus working as a community service officer for the San Diego State University Police. And we patrolled campus. We did safety escorts for girls at night from the classroom buildings into their cars and the parking structures. We wrote parking sites. We did security for concerts, all stuff like that. So that got me more interested in law enforcement as a career. And then when I moved back to Calaveras, it's funny, but I actually saw an ad in the Calaveras Enterprise newspaper for correctional officer jobs.
Okay.
And although I was thinking about it, I hadn't completely committed, or, you know, it's not like growing up, I always wanted to be a cop or anything like that. That wasn't it. So I randomly saw an ad in the Enterprise that the sheriff's office was hiring correctional officers, and I applied and got the job. And 25 years later, here we are.
Yeah, the correctional path, for those listening for recruiting purposes, the correctional path is not necessary in Calaveras County. You can go straight to the deputy without being forced to do any jail time. But what we've noticed is the people that do come up through the ranks, if you will, through the jail system, their communication skills with the persons we typically interact with most are elevated when they do come off into the street for the field training officer program that we'll talk about later. But a lot of deputies in our department have gone that route, and it's been very rewarding to their careers.
Yeah, but I mean, both you and I were correctional officers before we were cops. And so we do have recurring clients in our county, so you get to know them. And if you're working in a correctional setting and you're like, oh, that's Joe. Joe's serving a sentence for burglary or narcotics or whatever. And then when you transition on your street and you're like, oh, that's Joe. Joe doesn't belong in this neighborhood, and Joe is a burglar, and so you get to know them, and it really did help. And then there's always that transitional period when people leave high school, they're 18 years old, you got to be 21. So it's another avenue of, if you want to get into the career path early, the correctional, it's not that. And then we have people that have worked in our jail for 20 years and they love it. And that's their complete career. It's satisfying. It's good pay. You're working on a team. We run a nice, clean jail. It's pretty safe for staff.
It's new.
Yeah, it's newer, so it's just a good job pathway in general as well. Yeah,
that's an important point to bring up regarding that bridge or the gap between graduating and being 21. With our internship program and with the correctional officer program, you can still go to school, start your career, start your medical, start your retirement as a correctional officer, and then when it's time and when you're ready, you can graduate onto the street, as we call it, or to a deputy or not. But that's making sure that gap is a lot of times where we miss people and they move away, and then they get bogged down with, life and bills, and, they don't think they can make that transition back. So that's a really good point. You mentioned you've been, employed here for about 25 years. What do you find most rewarding about your job as a sheriff?
So, growing up, playing sports and on teams, it was, all of us. It was nice joining a department where you can continue that kind of team and camaraderie feeling. And then throughout the majority of my career, I always felt, most rewarding, as I'm sure you do, when you really see that, wow, what I did today actually saved lives, or I found this and I prevented a crime, or you like working investigations and putting all the puzzle pieces together, like, I got you, that was always rewarding. And then most recently, as a member of the Sheriff's Administration, and especially as sheriff, it's rewarding to help shape the future of our department. sometimes I see new deputies and I'm like, hey, I recruited that guy or girl and they're doing awesome. And,
Right.
they're good for our department and I'm so proud of that. Or when I was a field training officer, 2 of my previous trainees are now sergeants in our department and seeing their careers take off. So I just like being part of our leadership team here and working towards what we can do to make our department better.
Yeah, it's interesting. At every level, you have that different satisfaction. You
Yeah.
have that where you go to domestic violence and somebody's absolutely been victimized and you get them out of a bad situation and I'll say it, you take the bad person to jail that did something wrong and that person is safe for the night. That's your satisfaction. And as you graduate up the chain or up the chain of command, if you will, now the satisfaction comes from imparting your knowledge to the younger generation or the next generation. And it's a different satisfaction, but just as rewarding.
Yep, you nailed it.
So as rewarding as the journey is to be, becoming sheriff and just the law enforcement career in general, can you share with some of the people that are looking into the career of what are some of the difficulties or challenges that law enforcement faces in general on your journey, I should say?
Yeah, so challenges, there's going to be quite a few. This might get too lengthy, but there's the day-to-day work of being a deputy, going through stressful and difficult situations that we all deal with, that everyone knows law enforcement deals with. And then there's the critical incidents. For instance, I was ambushed early on in my career. I had only been working as a patrol deputy for like 6 months, and a domestic violence suspect opened fire on me and my partner as we were arriving on a scene, and I ended up with a bullet hole through my driver's side patrol car headlight. And it was just inches below where my head was located, and it went to a standoff, and our SWAT team came out. Crisis negotiators eventually got the guy to surrender, but there are challenges, going through critical incident after critical incident over a 25-year career and just not letting those stressors, break you and relying on your officer wellness and peer support. And then I spent about 3 years as the sexual assault child abuse detective and crimes against children cases. And when you specialize in doing just that for multiple years, sometimes I would question humanity, and question my faith in just seeing the horrible things that people can do. And so that's always challenging as a law enforcement officer. And then one of the bigger challenges for a lot of law enforcement is just like everyone else, juggling life and work. My husband and I, we've been married for 20 years. We raised our daughter. We struggled like many parents, working shift work, long hours, call-outs, childcare issues. So, of course, being a law enforcement officer in our county and being a parent is challenging. But my daughter graduated from Calaveras High School, too. She's out in the world attending college right now. So the same feeling I know I've talked to you about, Lieutenant, when you see your kid as a contributing member of society, there's nothing more rewarding in that. And that helps us stay grounded when we're faced with challenges.
Right.
But one other thing I do want to talk, and I debated even bringing this up, but being the first female sheriff, it does come with a level of scrutiny. It does come with some unique challenges. So for the most part, our community members, they just want to know my opinion on their gun rights and immigration and school safety, whatever the hot button topic is at the time. What programs are we going to support and continue? And am I just going to ensure that when they call 911, is help going to show up?
Right.
For the most part, that's what the community cares about. And at least I had the opportunity to come up all the way through the ranks and became sheriff, after a couple decades working here. So I could prove myself at every level before taking on the sheriff role, compared to an elected sheriff that comes in from outside of the agency.
Right.
They don't have that experience or knowledge or, the historical of working in our community. But just being a female leader, sometimes I do get questioned. Like, are you going to push DEI initiatives, the diversity, equity, inclusion? So I will say I am always thinking, like, why wasn't there a female in the last group of recruits, that we sent to the police academy? And the reason I'm thinking that is because the last female deputy we hired here was a couple years ago. So it's just natural. Out of the 61 positions of our sworn staff at the sheriff's office, only 6 are females. That's less than 10%. So yes, I do think about what are we intentionally doing to attract, retain, and support the success of any qualified candidates. And sometimes we do focused intentional recruiting with diversity in mind. But in the last 5 years, recruitment and retention in law enforcement in general has been very difficult. Amongst the discussion of standards, some departments lowering their standards or gearing certain ways. We in Calaveras, we have been staying focused on, better pay,
Right.
Officer wellness, and especially our agency culture. And we have refused, and I think we've all agreeing, we're going to continue to refuse to lower our standards or make accommodations or give preference just to meet a quota. That's just not us here.
Right.
So for our department, we just recently, we're starting to see an uptick again in quantity and quality of applicants, and we're transitioning from slim pickings to getting good quality applicants again. So we never lowered our standards. We had no plans to. And thankfully, law enforcement's a little more popular than it was there for a little bit.
Right.
So between that and getting the pay raises that we have over the past year, I think we're looking better.
Yeah, and there's, to unpack a little bit what you talked about, the stress that law enforcement goes through. You lived through it, and I know I certainly did, and a lot of other deputies and law enforcement around the nation. When we first started, there was really very limited stress management. It was, are you done with your call? Cool. You okay? Move on at best. And we've gotten, as a community of law enforcement, a lot better at recognizing stress. I know in our department, our deputy wellness program has blossomed quite a bit, and understanding that, getting to retirement both physically is a challenge and also mentally, and making sure that those officers and deputies are taken care of is taking center stage. And that kind of parlays into what you mentioned with, we're absolutely not lowering our standards, but we are reaching out to groups who have historically been minimized or even, not advertised to as much for employment in law enforcement. And part of that includes females.
Yeah.
And they absolutely, the percentages you mentioned are very low. And there are things that, and I'll just speak personally, sometimes I've been, at a sexual assault call for service, and the female does not want to talk to a male officer. Having the female officers there to engage in that is absolutely a service to, half our population. And I think it's very important to point out that, yes, we are reaching out, but we're also reaching out with a standard.
Yeah.
And I know your family lives here, mine do. A lot of deputies' families live here, and we, and I'm speaking for you, are not going to put anybody on the street that I don't want showing up my mom's door. If my mom calls 911, I want her to get somebody with the standards that we have in place to give my mom, the best service, and everybody's mother. So that's a really good point you brought up.
Yeah. And I don't know if you want to talk about this later or not, but I'd like you to share what you started doing and the message that you sent out to athletic directors. Because, when we're looking at recruiting efforts, we are looking for those strong, hardworking, team-oriented, goal-oriented individuals, because we don't want reactive law enforcement officers in our county. We want proactive deputies. We want proactive correctional officers that you see something that needs to be fixed. You need to go after it. You want to investigate it. We want those people. So I thought you guys had a great idea with the recruiting team for reaching out. Why don't you tell them a little bit what you did with colleges?
So we developed a recruiting team in our office to come up with new and different ways to reach out to people like we talked about who have historically been not touched by recruiting efforts. And we came up with a letter to regional colleges, junior colleges in California, advising them that we are recruiting, looking specifically for female athletes who have just graduated recently or are about to graduate and are looking for a career path. and some of the stuff you touched on, people who play sports, they're well embedded in teamwork, and that's what we do every day. We are a team. We look out for each other. That's what teammates do. It's a very physically demanding career, and it takes at times, a person who's not afraid to lean into something that most people might not want to lean into. Somebody who's, altered state of consciousness that wants to not listen, cause harm to people, and they might need force to take them into custody. So we reached out to those colleges. We've gotten some responses back. Large college down in the Central Valley is looking at hosting a symposium for not just females, but all persons graduating. So
yep, totally. Give a shout out to Taylor at Fresno
State.
Yep, for calling us back. And then the same thing we do with the military personnel. They've gotten a lot of training, tactical training,
Right.
firearms training, communication training, the structure. They're used to chain of command, org command and control. So we have a lot of active duty and retired personnel in our department. I mean, it's a struggle for us sometimes managing everyone's military leave, but recruiting military personnel and reaching out to those career centers at bases around California and just letting them know that we participate in the Skills Bridge program. We like to pull even better if they came from Calaveras, went out in the world, served in the military, and they're retiring and bringing them back here. But just kind of reaching out more, whatever we can do for increasing our recruiting efforts.
Yeah, both the military and the sports, they've been ingrained with when things get tough, it's okay, and they've already had that inoculation of, the stress and the adversity to some degree, and that's what we're looking for. When things get tough, are you going to keep going? Are you going to do the right thing when you're supposed to? And the Skill Bridge program, for those who don't know, is a program where persons in the military who are getting out can get out just a little bit earlier and come to the academy while they're still technically in the military, but they're in the academy sponsored by us, and then they graduate and exit the military. So it's that, again, giving back to those who served us, giving them the job training to exit and come into civilian life a little more fluidly.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. If you're sitting there right now and you're a dishwasher, you're a valet, you're, whatever, it doesn't matter. You may that's why this career is a calling. You may be pulled in for any reason. We've hired people who have been social workers, and then they became law enforcement officers, and they're some of our best communicators and understanding and de-escalators that we have. So it's all walks of life.
Baristas, I mean, it takes everybody to fill our department. So again, just to touch on a few more things before we get into the real meat and potatoes of the path of recruitment. From 25 years ago till now, how has your perspective on law enforcement changed, for better or worse?
Oh, so much has changed. You and I live and work in a very different world than when we became deputies. And there were definitely times over the past 10 years when I'd have a hard time encouraging anyone to get into law enforcement. We went through COVID, we went through George Floyd and the anti-police riots and rhetoric. I mean, that was hard. And the evolution of laws, the decriminalization, like we used to hook people for having a little nugget of weed, and then it went to completely decriminalized. And then you steal this, and it used to be grand theft, and then it got, dropped down to a misdemeanor. Now it's kind of swinging a little back in our favor with Prop 36 and the increased penalties on theft and drug crimes. But a lot of things have changed. So I think it just all comes down to, like, when you get into law enforcement, just focusing on the impact of what you're doing has on our community. Right.
That's a good point. Some people that, you mentioned before our clients, sometimes we have clients that I think I've arrested the same person half a dozen times, and you arrested the same person half a dozen times.
Yeah, the exact same person.
The exact same person. And that, multiple people in our department have that same story. I think what you're touching on right there is getting, like, some people just call law enforcement once or twice in their life, and just being that person to show up and being the difference and to let them know somebody cares and let them know we're going to take care of things that need to be taken care of. It's a good point.
In Calaveras, we have a good supportive community. That's one of the great pulls we have for recruiting and retention here is we do have a community that supports us, and we want to keep it that way.
Right.
We all, majority of us, we live here. We were raising our kids here. A lot of our deputies and dispatchers and correctional officers, they're local coaches. They're involved. So we encourage everyone to engage with the community, work on the quality of life issues, and not just preventing or solving crimes.
Yeah, I always tell people, some of my friends that work in other jurisdictions that don't have such a supportive community, I say our community waves with all their fingers.
Yeah.
And some places,
just one.
Yeah, some places aren't as lucky. So real quick, before we get into the nuts and bolts, what advice would you give anybody who's considering a career in law enforcement? When I say law enforcement, right now we're talking specifically about patrol, but there's corrections, there's dispatch, there's our internship program. So what advice would you give them?
If you're feeling that pull and you are very interested, come and talk to one of us. Talk to one of our recruiters. Go on a ride along. Sit a shift in dispatch and see what it's like. Talk to our sheriff techs. If you're like, I have that pull, but I am never going to be confrontational. When it's fight or flight, I'm a flight. But I still just feel that pull. We have non-sworn jobs too. But if you're interested in it, then do a little research. Even just listening to this podcast. But come and talk to us.
Yeah, research in the department you want to work for, the workload, call volume, like you mentioned before, our environment that we work in, and our supportiveness of each other. Do some homework, because this could be a place where you're living at for the next 30 some years.
Hopefully.
Yeah, right. All right. So we're hiring. Can you give us a brief overview of what's happening with the Sheriff's Department as far as recruiting, how many we're looking for, things of that nature?
So I'm so happy to report dispatch right now is fully staffed. And
how long's that been?
We've been running them ragged on overtime for several years now. Between low staffing numbers and then people out and then trying to figure out vacations and still giving them time off. So fully staffed, 3 of the new dispatchers are in training. A couple of them and all of them are looking great, doing great. So really happy that dispatch is in that position now. We do have that one deputy that just graduated from the Delta Police Academy. He's in Deputy Nisbet. He's on the field training program. He's doing well. He's adjusting. He's in phase 1, so he's in a learning phase. And then we sent 4 into the next academy that just started this past Saturday.
So they're week 1 right now.
They are week 1 through orientation. I'm sure they're doing push-ups for some reason as we speak.
Or no reason.
Or hopefully not. They don't really need a reason to make you do push-ups when you're in the police academy, so get used to it. So they've got 6 months. We won't see them hit the streets, until beginning of February. And then even after that, then it's another 16 weeks to get through the field training officer positions. So, but that'll be good. And then after that, we probably have 2 other openings right now for deputy, but we do have some pending retirements. Right. There are a couple people at retirement age that keep teasing us that they're going to retire. So we are holding our breath to see whether that'll happen or not. And then we deal with attrition, and if that happens, we can deal with promotions, and it does bring rise for opportunities in the department.
So we're looking at hiring the next group to go through end of February, early March of 26, when this group graduates from the Delta Police Academy, Delta Junior College Police Academy. So there are some positions, and at least probably 2 to 4-ish, we'll call it for now.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that. And we do have, I think 3 or 4, it depends where someone was at in the background process, maybe 3 open correctional officer positions too. Okay. So like I said, even though dispatch is full, and it is hard budget times. Calaveras County is on a hiring freeze. Thankfully, the board and the county administration is still allowing us to fill some of those spots. Because as you know, from the point where we hire a new deputy, they're not going to hit the street for a year.
Right.
Or where they point where you apply, you go through the background, and I know we're going to get into that and how long it takes.
Right.
But that's like a full year.
Right.
I would love to say that no one is going to leave our department in that entire year, but it happens. So we have to try and pre-plan this.
And that year you're done with official training, but then to become a competent, do it all yourself without asking questions and getting it done is still, several years to mature as a deputy. So that 1 year just to get on the street and get going is just the beginning of now I'm in the car by myself and there's nobody to ask a question to, and, getting that up to speed.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're hiring, we got some places in the jail and in patrol. What is the initial process after somebody puts in their application? Through the county website? What happens next?
Yep. So they submit their application. The county uses governmentjobs.com, so it's an easy application. You create an account, and then you have it for good. So if you apply for a deputy position and you don't get it, it's really easy to reapply for a correctional officer position or keep applying.
Right.
That's another. I know I'm going to tangent a little bit.
That's okay.
You know my personality. But if you don't get it, keep applying.
Right.
If you fail the test, if you didn't pass the interview because you were so nervous, you know what to expect.
Right.
Try again. So you turn in your online application, and then let's just say for the deputy position, we'll focus on that for this. You get scheduled, so you get invited to come to take our written and our physical agility. So the written's called the Pellet B. You can Google or whatever search engine, Pellet B preparation guide.
Right.
Something will come up. Sample questions, vocabulary. You'll know what to expect then. So if you've never taken the written exam, Google Pellet B. And then the same with our physical agility. If you Google work sample test battery, that's what it's officially called. So at Calaveras, we use the standardized physical agility that is put out by the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training. We have an obstacle course we built behind the sheriff's office, and it consists of 5 elements. So the obstacle course agility run, it's a 99-yard run, but realistically, it just kind of simulates a foot chase. You
stop and start, side to side,
zigzag over a couple curbs, and then there's a little 2.5 foot, almost like a sawhorse at the end of it that you go over and sprint. There's a body drag, so we have a 165-pound lifelike dummy. You got to be able to drag it, but you only got to drag it 32 feet. It's not that big, so just shuffling your feet. The 6-foot chain link fence. You run 5 yards up and over the fence, and run out 25 yards. The solid fence climb, same thing. You run 5 yards up and over the 6-foot fence and then continue 25 yards. And then the 500-yard run, for time. And Post puts out this chart. So we time everything, and then the chart translates it to points, and you have to get so many points to pass. But that's pretty much what the physical agility is. So you pass the written, you pass the physical agility, and then you can get invited to come to our interview.
So we brought up a really good point at the beginning of try again. So after all the written's done, and after the physical agility's done, each course of the physical agility's scored individually.
Yeah.
So the difference between passing and not passing could be 0.1%.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, after we're all done talking about the process, the difference between number 3 on the list and number 4 on the list could be 0.1 of a point. So you could just barely miss it for this selection, but if you try again, you'll do better, and you'll should move up the rankings. And then for the physical, you mentioned the written test has tips. If you look online, and again, any search engine, it'll give you tips on, how to drag the dummy more efficiently. You mentioned shuffling your feet, keeping a wide stance, keeping your bottom down. There's techniques to get over a chain link fence. There's techniques to get over a wood fence. Look those up, and we'll coach you while you're there, but look those up and prepare for those before you show up, and it will drastically improve your score. It could launch you, well up the scoring.
It does. And they get, other than the 500-yard run, because you only get one chance as that, everything else you get two chances.
Right.
So let's say you run and you've practiced going over the wall and you're like, I got this. And then you just splat like a mosquito or like,
Right.
something on the
Bug on a windshield.
Thank you. Bug on a windshield. If you just you're like, I just screwed that up, you get another chance at it.
Right.
And side tip, I will say the solid fence wall probably has the most points. So you want to get up and over that fast. And, like me, I got decent upper body strength. I can't do pull-ups, but I use my leg strength,
Right.
So practice and learn some techniques going into it. Don't just come in cold, come in ready. You don't have to be the fittest, most muscular person out there, but you just need to be able to pass the test.
Yeah, exactly right. So we have the written, the physical, those get processed, and then from there we do a what's next?
So then if you pass all that, you can be invited to the interview.
Mm-hmm.
So we usually do a panel interview. There's usually like 3 people from our department. They are of a rank at least greater than the one that people are applying for. So oftentimes on our new recruit interviews, you'll see deputies, corporals, or sergeants, and it's a mix, staff availability and all. And sometimes it can be the recurring group that's part of our recruiting team. But in our interviews, we don't expect people to have all the answers. We don't expect them to know our policies and procedures. We are looking for common sense decision making.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to get to know you a little bit, see if you're squared away, see how you answer. There's a couple scenario questions, just even if you don't know the policies or what we do in law enforcement, like how do you think
Right.
you would handle this? Or like, have you ever been put in situations where your morals have come into question or, things like that. So they go through the interview process. And if you pass your interview and you score high enough, depending on how many, we're looking for in that group, then you can get a background packet to start filling out to do your background.
And what does the background packet cover? What does it entail?
So there is 3 categories in the backgrounds that we look at. Of course, we look at drug history.
Mm-hmm.
There are provisions. If you have done certain things, it may disqualify you. And I say may because different, narcotics use may have different time frames.
Mm-hmm.
That's allowable with different agencies. So there's drug history, general history, and work history. So where did you grow up? Where have you worked? Do you have any financial issues, bankruptcy, things like that? Because as a law enforcement officer, you're going to be entrusted, with people's lives and people's property. So all of those things, a personal history statement, they go through. It's pretty intensive. So if you're thinking about it, if you're applying, if you're going through the process, start getting your stuff together. So some of it takes notary.
Right.
Get your diplomas, get your birth certificate, get your marriage certificate, get your DD 214 if you're coming out of the military. Get all of those things together. And then you'll do the background interview with one of our background officers. And sometimes it can take a couple months. It takes some patience, but
Right.
we even do neighborhood checks, to
Knock on your neighbor's door.
Knock
hey.
on your neighbor door. And so it's a pretty lengthy process.
Yeah, and one thing I could suggest for people that do get to the background process is don't overtly omit something that we're going to find out. Omitting something that could be explainable is probably worse than just explaining it.
I'm glad you said that because a lot of our DQs are just for silly stuff where it's like if you would have just told us, it probably could have been explainable that. And we do dumb stuff as kids before
Right.
you grow up, and sometimes it does mean that you become disqualified, and it sucks. But at least you tried for it and you were truthful.
Right.
And sometimes that's the point of getting to know you in the background officer interview and how truthful you're being. But if you roll the dice and omit it and not tell us and we figure it out, and oftentimes we do, then you're automatically out and you have no chance. So just let us know and go for it.
Right. You roll the dice. Just remember the house always wins. And we're going to find it. So interview, background, and then where we go from there.
So we utilize computer voice stress analysis. So it's essentially a lie people call it lie detectors, but really it indicates deception or not. So it measures the frequency modulation in your voice to see if you're basically telling the truth. So you go through a series of questions with one of our trained interviewers. And once you pass all of that, then you're just looking at psych and medical.
Okay.
So, of course, law enforcement field, you're going to get into things, you're going to see things, you got to be able to know that you're going to be able to handle it. Are you psychologically fit? So we do contract with a couple psychologists that do backgrounds. And they give us, the go or no go on whether people pass it, and then we do the medical, and it's quite a bit of hoops that you got to jump through. So that's why I said it can take a couple months.
Yeah, it does. It does take a couple months. You're right, and it's also just to circle back what we were talking about. This whole process, we have standards, and these standards haven't changed. The medical background, the CVSA you talked about, this is all. They're not trying to get you to, any gotcha questions. We're just trying to get the real you.
Yep.
Because when it's in the middle of the night and the real you's out there, we want to make sure that real you is what we want representing our department.
Very well worded. So
we go into the academy and talk a little bit about the sponsorship for the academy, if you will, and then the academy. Everybody's pretty much familiar. It's academics, physical. Not much policy. We get into that, but the academics cover, laws of arrest, when you can't, what's civil, what's criminal,
defensive tactics, firearms
shooting,
training,
driving,
emergency driving. So we do sponsor people through the academy. We pay the tuition costs. We equip them fully with their academy uniforms, their duty belts, the holsters, everything, department issued firearms. Their baton, everything that it would cost. And then a huge cost that people don't think about when they send themselves through the academy is the ammunition costs. So, they shoot so much in the academy. That's probably one of our bigger costs is the ammunition costs. So we pay for all of that. They wear our patch as they're going through it. So the day that they are picked up, that they sign their conditional employment with us, that's it. You are a member of our family. You are a representative of Calaveras County. We always talk to them about our expectations and how we expect them to represent us because depending on which academy, we use both the Stanislaus and the Delta Academy, the San Joaquin Delta, and one of them is 5 months, one of them is 6 months. That's a long haul. That is a commitment. So you're hired on as a deputy extra hire, considered a recruit, and so we pay for them to go through the academy and all the expenses involved in it.
In addition to an hourly rate while they're there. So that's for people that are, maybe working, supporting a family. They can't take that 6 month off without compensation. We will pay you to go to the academy. And if somebody is listening that, maybe they're not familiar with firearms or they're not familiar with, DTAC, or they're nervous about any subject or category in the academy, we will bring you in pre-academy and we'll take you to the range and give you some basics. We'll talk you through some DTAC. We'll talk you through physical stuff. We will prepare you so when you go to the academy, there's no surprises. The first time you touch a firearm isn't the time you're in the academy. So we have a really good workup. So when you get there, you know what to expect and you can perform optimally. So the academy graduation, usually 6 months later.
Yep.
They graduate and then.
So, and then the real work starts. So you think you just went through a 3 month background, 6 month academy, like you're gold. That is just the beginning, We put them usually through a 2-week orientation, kind of slow roll because it's a little shocking.
Right.
Slow roll, them coming in. They spend some time in dispatch, some time over at the courthouse. The district attorney comes over and kind of lays out her standards and expectations for prosecution. They'll go over to the crisis center and victim witness. Sometimes they'll talk to APS, CPS. They'll get their Narcan training.
Lay of the land.
Lay of the land, everything. So about 2 weeks, And then they start our field training officer program. And our field training officer program runs about 16 weeks. The very first week is, 0 week. They're in the passenger seat. They're observing their corporal, their FTO, doing everything. They're still involved. They're in uniform.
Right.
Day one of orientation is your firearms qualification, your defensive tactics, and your baton qualification. So they're ready to go day one of orientation. But like I said, we roll them into it. So they go through 0 week, and then they start there's 3 different phases in the field training officer program. So the first phase, each of them is about 5 weeks, and it's progressively of the FTO helping them through the calls and kind of assisting them, and then slowly the FTO kind of backs off and lets them run leave and kind of takes on reversing the role of contact and cover officer, and the FTO hopefully by phase 3 is more of just a cover officer and ensuring that those deputies are ready for solo patrol.
Yeah, I think one of the nice aspects about the field training program is at times it can feel like you're drinking through a fire hose.
Oh, yeah.
But our FTO trainers are set up for the best successful learning style for each individual person. Everybody has adult learning characteristics. We go with 3 different FTOs, so you get 3 different perspectives. We try to put you on graveyard, different shift work to help have somebody mentor you through, hey, this is how you sleep on graveyard.
Yeah.
This is how you get appropriate nutrition.
You mean sleep when you're off duty.
Right.
And different sides of the county, because working in Valley Springs in our county is very different than working Dorrington. Yeah, so we move them around.
Yeah, the community expectations in different areas. And I still remember the field training officers that put up with me when I was on the program. And I know what type of impact they had on my career and shaping me. That's what we try to put into we're trying to get you to succeed. There are some agencies that try to weed out, and we try to, instead of weeding out, we try to fertilize and grow.
Yeah, I remember day one of me driving, with Corporal Drew, Morgan Drew. That was one of my first FTOs. I pulled a vehicle over on up in Railroad Flat near Wells Fargo Road. Go to walk out of the car, like first traffic stop, took off on me. And so we chased it. Guy bailed in the woods. We looked through the woods. We tried to find him. We didn't. We towed the car.
Right.
And we get back in the car, and the FTO is like, well, the rest of the night we're going to work on tactics. And you learn. It's your time to learn. And as long as you're safe and officer safety is paramount, the rest of the stuff, we learn in the field training program.
Yeah, the safety net's a good point. Like, you're going through that experience that you just described with somebody there watching over you, watching the situation to keep you safe so you can make it through and learn.
Yeah, and our field training officers, our corporals, that's the rank in our department. The corporals are the field training officers. They're chosen for a reason. Their leadership qualities, their they are what we want, what we embody, and a best of the best of our deputies, and that's why they started rising in the ranks.
Right. They all have their own little niche, if you will. Like, some of them are really good report writers, and they stress that, and there's some of them are, let's just get after it and start making car stops, and you get that different experience from each one, and you kind of blend all of those to fit your personality and your skill set.
Yep.
So we talked a lot about recruiting new employees or new people that haven't had any experience whatsoever to law enforcement. I've noticed over the last several years it was almost unheard of that we got what we call laterals, somebody who's employed in another agency. We've got recently pulled in people the last few years from San Francisco, from the other Bay Area agencies. What, if you can put into words, why are the laterals coming here?
I think it's multitude of things. Commute. There were people that lived in our area that were commuting long hours and then working long shifts and then trying to get home. So we struggled with getting laterals. Pay was huge.
Right.
It just wasn't worth it for them. And so I think we're going to talk about incentives in a little bit. But just living up here, having such a supportive community, a little more equitable pay, the culture, There are people, of course, that have left our department and gone to work for other agencies. But when I bump into those people or kind of randomly check on them, like, how's life? They're like, I didn't realize how good I had it.
Right.
And I tell everyone, like, whether I'm happy I left or not, like, I regret it.
Right.
So Calaveras has been doing really well actually on bringing people back and then pulling people from the cities too. And some of that is just a different evolution of wanting a better life in a rural environment.
Right.
And the opportunities that our department, some people like you said, Calaveras doesn't have a jail duty requirement. So you can come straight out of the academy, you hit patrol. Some departments, you go to the academy and then you have to work in the jail for 5 years. Or you start patrol and you have to work patrol 5-10 years before you can get a special assignment. And we have guys that are applying and already being hang-arounds for our special teams, the second they're off probation or within their first year. And those opportunities and knowing that you'll be able to work cases from start to finish and you don't just have to hand them off, to detectives or to a crime scene, like you can actually work investigations. So there's a lot of reasons that it seems like we are starting to pull more laterals.
And you brought up a very good point that the pay is getting more comparable. And honestly, it used to be cost effective to drive a long distance living in the county and driving a long distance.
Yeah.
But economically, the gas prices and everything else, it's getting a little bit more expensive. And that margin, I think we meaning Board of Supervisors, the Sheriff's Administration, when they came up with that new comprehensive benefit package, I think we narrowed the gap where hopefully if you're listening to this as a lateral, come talk to us. The numbers are really close, and I think what the numbers don't have for you, the quality of life will.
Good job. Well said.
So now we know the process. We know from putting in your application to graduating FTO, and now you're on your own.
Yep.
In the selection process, what are some of the qualities or characteristics, maybe the top 3, if you will, that you really look for in who you want to hire?
So what I think about when I sat on panels, and when we're making decisions and when we're reviewing backgrounds, top 3 I would say is integrity, commitment, and, in Calaveras, a strong sense of serving our citizens. Problem-oriented, community-oriented, policing, relationship-based policing. They're cornerstone philosophies of our department. So we look for well-rounded candidates that care. Like with integrity, we focus on how are our deputies doing to establish and maintain trust with our community. It's a small community. They got to be able to want to call us and want to see us show up, so integrity is huge.
Yeah, that's very well said of, the problem solving, critical thinking, communication, that all is a byproduct of being somebody with integrity and being trustworthy. That, everybody says, well, we want somebody that have critical thinking, but if they're not trustworthy, I don't want them. And sometimes, people say, what are you looking for? And sometimes it's just the right person. It's not the fastest. It's not the smartest. It's the person who wants, like you said, to serve the community. And, we are public servants. It's our job. They are our customers, and we want them to be as satisfied as possible. In that, what role does education, formal or otherwise, play in the selection process for new deputies?
I mean, it can help. Like I chose, I had the opportunity and I was lucky to go to college right outside of high school, but not everyone gets to do that or school's just not for them. There is something to say about having people who are book smart and street smart and, so it does help. We do have pay incentives. If you have your AA, you get so much money. If you have your bachelor's, if you have your master's, you get so much money. And, I've said this several times since I've been sheriff that modern policing does demand professional, educated law enforcement officers. So we are definitely looking more towards formal education, but it's not 100% necessary. Like there are a lot of other skills that people have, and that comes into it when we're factoring that into candidates.
And if you don't have a degree right off the bat, the explosion of online schools, you can get a job as a deputy, and over time, at your pace, get that degree and get those incentives.
Yeah, you and I both have done it in the past couple years, and it's a struggle. And I came into this with my bachelor's degree and then spent 20 years just focused on the job. And our department sends us through a decent amount of training and leadership, emotional intelligence, not just like perimeter containment, domestic violence, the general law enforcement. But I didn't think about continuing formal education for years. And then when I had the opportunity to go to the FBI National Academy in Quantico, and I stayed there for 10 weeks, that's affiliated with the University of Virginia. So I applied. Otherwise a master's degree was nowhere on my thought. I was just being a cop and but then after a while and you start rising through the ranks and you're like, oh crap, this is like running a business.
Right.
And now it's personnel and brand marketing and recruiting and retention. And so you did the same thing. We finished our master's degree. We understand that modern policing, having an education does help. So it is important.
Yeah, the crossroads of needing a higher education, like you mentioned, getting that business degree later in life and whatnot, that crossroad with the explosion of the online really made it convenient. Otherwise, that was prohibitive for myself, family, working overtime, special shifts and whatnot. Dedicating going to the brick and mortar, if you will, was not an option. So with that advent, it was really helpful personally for me.
Yeah, it's doable. I mean,
it's not fun.
It was multitasking, and you're dealing with a critical incident, and then you're writing a term paper, and it was a lot.
Yeah,
I'm glad it's over. I don't know if you're glad it's over. But
glad's not the word, but whatever is above glad is what I am.
I highly encourage it though, because I did learn a lot, and it opened my eyes to a lot of things.
And there's a financial incentive, to be honest.
Well, yeah, that
doesn't hurt.
Our county does pay a percentage in addition off your base wage, so that did not hurt.
Right. So you mentioned the continuing education opportunities, and this is in addition to, like you said, the standard going to the range and qualifying, the standard recertification for DTAC. What other continuing educational opportunities? Maybe speak on some of the stuff that detectives get, or some of the field training officers, the education that we offer.
Yeah, so there are post-certified trainings, the California Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Trainings. There's a lot of trainings that are out there and specialties in the field, and not just if you're on one of our special teams like hostage negotiator, SWAT, things like that. But we send our deputies through every couple of years you have to go through perishable skills. So there's so many hours that you have to do tactical communication, emergency driving, firearms, help me out, DTAC,
de-escalation, if you didn't say that. There's about 10 different annual squad trainings that we host. And we break up our shooting into at least 4 times a year. Some departments do it once a year, but we keep that perishable skill fresh throughout the year. And we hit all those each month. We do some type of training. So it's not get it all done at the beginning of the year and we add in, what's new. Like we're having, maybe we'll have specific issues with, there's some bad narcotics going around. We'll do an extra block on, noticing signs of intoxication, things like that, brushing up on, making our cases more prosecutable for the district attorney's office. So every month we have a built-in squad training where we all get together and we hash out what's going on right now, go over some perishable skills, and keep our knowledge base spread amongst everybody instead of just select teams, or only the detectives get to go to this, or only the Marine safety deputies get to go to this. We all get together and then
we also send our deputies away to like interview and interrogation and some of the specialty trainings. And our detectives, they go to a lot of ICI trainings, basic homicide, crime scene, processing. The expertise. Like when I was in detectives, I went to several-week course just on sexual assaults and child abuse and child forensic interviews. And then we go to conferences as well. And sometimes our question, like, why do cops need to go to conferences? Because there's a lot of industry standards that change. There are case laws. There's constant Supreme Court decisions that we need to keep up with, things like that, that we make sure that Calaveras County doesn't fall behind and that we stay up on what's going on and make sure that we're keeping up and more leading with some of it.
Right. To call ourselves a contemporary law enforcement agency, we have to be up to date on, like you said, the new laws, because they change constantly, and we have to be up to date on the newest tactics and the standards of practice of doing business.
Yep.
So we talked about patrols, generally the first stop, like 99% of the time of the journey of a law enforcement officer. You mentioned special assignments, and some of those come with another compounding percentage of pay that come with them. But after patrol, newer deputies can start looking at some of those special assignments. If you want to maybe run down those and discuss those a little bit.
So we have a couple different things in our department. We have special assignments and we have special teams.
Gotcha.
So let's talk about special assignments first. We have a number of grants, contracts, projects. And then there's things that we make decisions on, we being the sheriff's administration. Like, we don't have any funding tied to a school resource officer right now, but we choose to keep a dedicated school resource officer. So one of our deputies that came through patrol got assigned as the school resource officer to be that liaison to ensure, there's a level of readiness and communication, everything with our schools. So you have our SRO. We do have, our narcotics division, our marijuana enforcement team, our detective, the whole investigation division. There's that. We do run court security, and that is run by a sergeant and a couple deputies, and then staffed also by our extra hire retired annuitants. A lot of them are retired cops,
right,
that work over there. But there's the court security assignment. We have a marine safety division. So there's a sergeant and a deputy that patrol the various lakes around Calaveras County. We do get some funding from Department of Boating and Waterways to do that. We have an off-highway vehicle enforcement, an OHV deputy that has quads, and there's a lot of Forest Service logging area in our county. That whole spiderweb network of roads in our upper corridor. So we have an OHV deputy. We have lake contracts. So Lake Hogan, pays for, a certain percentage of a deputy during certain years, during the peak hours of the summer. East Bay Mud pays a couple deputies out at Comanche. The Bureau of Rec down at Maloney's, Lake Maloney's, they pay for a deputy as well. So we do have those contracts and special assignments. What else am I missing? You think
AB 109.
AB 109, yeah.
Which is our probation liaison. You're basically assigned to the probation department as a liaison to our office. I think it's really interesting to point out, and this is not disparaging to city brothers and sisters who work in cities, but working for a sheriff's department specifically, and more specifically Calaveras, the opportunity to be on patrol for a couple of years, to go to boats for a couple of years if you want, or go over to another special assignment and not get locked into patrol.
Yeah.
I think that's really the hidden gem. I mean, you can really move around and have, as busy as a career as you want. And that's really, I think, the hidden gem for Calaveras.
Yeah, and we have one canine right now.
That's true.
But I've been telling my guys, as soon as final budget's over in September, we've been talking about how we want to add another canine. So shameless pun, but some of them are chomping at the bit because they want that special assignment. They want the dog.
Yeah, that is the detectives and the dog are probably one of the most sought after in our area.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the special assignments. What are the special teams?
Of course, the biggest one that everyone knows about is SWAT, our special weapons and tactics. So our SWAT team, we just, we prioritize the needs, and there's things within the team they can do, like your entry, your sniper,
The specialty assignment.
Specialty assignment within the special team. But they have the Bearcat. They have a lot of specialized personal protective equipment above and beyond, even because they are the SWAT team.
Right.
They just got equipped with night vision. There are different things that they need to do. And the other end of our crisis response unit is our crisis negotiation team. So we have trained hostage negotiators. They go through the FBI certified hostage negotiations course. They just put into service their brand new command van.
Nice.
They're really excited about that. The setup time for that is way faster than it used to be. That vehicle is awesome. So there is search and rescue. You know that. You have led our search and rescue team along with Captain Sturm, Lieutenant Portinga, for years. Our search and rescue team is primarily volunteer. They survive mainly on fundraising, a lot of it. But the sheriff's office does oversee, manage it. We do have deputies that are assigned. They go to command and control classes, and much like our other special teams, they train once a month, high angle rescue, land-based navigation, whatever it is. But it's really interesting things that our deputies can get involved with. We have our scuba dive recovery team. You and I both were scuba divers. You a lot more years than I did, but diving in our waters, it's not the beautiful ocean.
No.
It is murky.
It is sharkless.
It is. There are no sharks that I have seen. During trainings, you have tried to scare us or threaten us that they were in there, but it's unfortunate. We're usually looking for bodies.
Right.
Sometimes we do evidence recovery or things like that when people throw stuff off the bridge, and we will find it. But for the main part, our dive team is a recovery team. So it's still essential. We keep our divers in the most state-of-the-art gear that we can. We work with a local scuba shop and inform in keeping that up. And then we have our hazmat and EOD team, so our bomb team. Again, they're FBI certified. They went back to, where's that, Alabama?
Yeah, back east.
Back east somewhere, I believe it's in Alabama. But our bomb team members, they mainly cover, because our bomb team covers kind of the Tri-County area. Yeah, it's regional. We work well. We work a lot with San Joaquin, Stanislaus, and we were old mining communities, so a lot of our calls are even like Grandpa passed away and we were cleaning out the shed and there's a bunch of det cord and stuff he just brought home from back in the day when he worked at the mines. And then, of course, we're in the hills and people like to get creative with improvised explosive devices. Very dangerous, highly illegal, but our bomb team deals with a lot of that too. So what else am I missing?
So those special teams that you just listed are the ones that carry a percentage compensation with them.
Yeah.
Those are the main ones.
A lot of those teams, if you're assigned to one of those teams, you get an additional 2.5% above and beyond your base pay for being on the special team.
And that stacks on top of your education incentive. It stacks on top of your longevity. It stacks. So all those, it's only 2.5%, but then you stay a little longer, you get some longevity.
Yeah.
You get on another special team, or you get education incentive. Those, when I say check out the numbers, they really do add up to a very comprehensive package.
Yeah, you don't want to just look at our base pay.
Yeah, that's
because there's a lot more opportunities. And then, like, if you're instructor, you can be a firearms instructor, a defensive tactics, emergency vehicle operator, instructor. Some of those carry with them an incentive as well. Right.
And some of the teams that we don't have incentives for right now, but we're working on, there's background investigations that we have some of our deputies do. There's peer support. We talked about that at the beginning of the show about making sure that we're able to de-stress and, our mental health is intact. That's very important. We also have a cold case task force that is very appealing to somebody who wants to work and learn and hone their investigative skills of, how to work backwards after the work's been done. They've been very successful, and that's a very attractive team that we have.
Yeah, it is. They're making some headway, and even though it's cold case, they're learning things about advanced DNA and genetic genealogy that they are bringing back to our department for some of our current cases and the things that you can track down and where the advancements are going. So it is helping overall.
Yeah, it's actually changing some of the way we look at what evidence is there now and collecting now, because the advancements are so far what we knew before. the forensics investigative genealogy that they're doing it's changing the way we're doing things for the better.
Yeah, it's crazy as they go through the old cases and seeing what evidence was collected in the 80s and 90s,
Right.
And the things that I'm sure they didn't even think about because the technology didn't exist.
Just not known. Yeah.
Or the things that a random cop did put in evidence, and then it just sat there for years.
Right.
So
in addition to talking about some of the special assignments and some of the perks that we have on the job, talk about the take-home vehicle when available.
So we do have take-home vehicles. You will notice that our patrol cars out in the community, parked in driveways or at our employees' houses. And one of the main benefits and one of the reasons we do that is it is an incentive. It does help cut down on the costs of some of our cops that don't get paid as much as they do in the larger jurisdictions. But a lot of our deputies are on one of those special teams that I talked about, the SWAT team, the crisis negotiators, the SAR team. And if they can leave their house and they are already located in our communities and they can respond directly to the scene in a faster response of not having to come to the office and dress and drive and pick up your car, and you can go straight from your house, you're getting to scenes faster.
Right. Just to illustrate that point, let's say somebody lives in Arnold. And they're on the SWAT team, and an incident happens in Arnold. Without the take-home car, that SWAT operator will have to drive down to the office, get into a patrol car, and then drive all the way back. And that could be, that's an extensive amount of time when there's a critical incident. If they drive from their house to the incident, I mean, they're there, exponentially faster. Same thing with search and rescue, same thing with dive and, all the emergency responses. And they have actually gotten to the scene and helped make better decisions that put things on a better path.
Yeah, you and I both know. I mean, even as members of the Sheriff's Administration, we're a little later on the notification. I mean, we got pretty good communication where we get called early, but sometimes we jump in our cars in the middle of the night and you show up on scene. You're like, oh crap, this is still a pretty active incident, and now you're in it because you ran. You got in your car and you drove so fast to getting there. One of our last more recent officer-involved shootings. I
was just thinking about that.
I arrived up on scene right when the last shots were being fired. Sergeant Anderson and I were literally running up, and it was like I was a captain at the time. Like I thought it was all over, and you just sometimes you leave your house and you go there right away, and that's what we want our people to do.
Right. So we've talked a lot about, the selection process and special assignments and other incentives. What's after patrol deputy?
So, I mean, whether you get in a special assignment or not, we do have a rank and file. We do have a command structure. We are a paramilitary organization. So you look at promoting, and you can promote to corporal. So those are the guys that have the 2 stripes, the 2 chevrons, on your uniform. And they're kind of our first line level supervisor. We try and make sure there's a corporal on every patrol shift. All of our detectives are at the rank of corporal. Our field training officers, our trainers are all corporals. So that's your first step in the progression of your career. And then, it goes up from there for being sergeant. And those are our supervisors and lieutenants that are our division commanders and captains that are our bureau commanders, and then the undersheriff and then the sheriff. But there are a lot of different things. You and I both spent a lot of time at the rank of sergeant. I spent over just a little over 10 years at the rank of sergeant alone. And you can move around to different things. So you could be a patrol supervisor. You could be the dispatch supervisor, office emergency services liaison. You could be the court security supervisor, detective supervisor. So once you think like, oh, I've got a handle on this and I've learned the career, and then you go to the next assignment and you're like, whoa, okay, now I learned this. Now the word liability is coming into the conversation a lot more than it used to. So,
yeah, you make a good point about the moving up and through the chain. And we also have, there's something to be said about, for some it's a natural progression. They want to, climb that ladder, if you will. And some, we have deputies that have been deputies for a very long time, and they are very good at it. And that's what it's not like you have to promote. We've had deputies at the department that it's good to have, deputies that have been here for a very long time, 10, 15 years,
Yeah.
and having that sage advice you can go to. When I started, my beat partners had 8 years and 7 years, and here I am, brand new guy, help give me resources and having those resources available. So I don't want anybody thinking that, well, if I become law enforcement, I have to move up to corporal. You can stay a deputy and have a very, very rewarding career.
Yeah, you absolutely can. And those are the people that we need. And those are our community-based deputies, too, that have the best knowledge. They know the people. They're in and out of our businesses. They're rattling the doors in the middle of the night, walking Main Street Murphy's or Coppertown Square. Those are people that are perfectly happy and really good at pushing patrol cars, and they've been handling things in the dark while the rest of everyone else is sleeping, and those are the guys that I want as backup.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit it, getting those personal, working, professional relationships with business owners and community, having that historical and institutional knowledge of who and where people are at is, you cannot buy that. Having those deputies out there with that knowledge is huge.
Yep.
So where we talked a little bit about how things have changed in law enforcement, where do you envision the future of law enforcement, or where do you see the sheriff's office in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, I mean, as we wrap this up, I think since we're talking about recruiting, increasing staffing.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
If we look at our position numbers now compared to when you and I started our career, our department has not grown. Like we would cling, we'd climb and we'd ask the board and we'd get some positions, and then we'd hit budget times like that 2009, 2010 recession. We took so many cuts. We lost some positions, and then we'd get them back and then we'd lose them. So we keep bouncing back and forth, but there are some things that we really want to do, and we can't do it unless we're able to increase our staffing levels.
Right. That's a huge, huge point of the more, and we're not asking for a ton, but if we get, 6, 7, 8 more deputies, we can get you another SRO, we can get you another K-9, we can do longer term investigations. I know you've had a lot of conversations about making sure that, we have a dedicated, detective for crimes against the elderly, making sure that our most vulnerable populations are taken care of, and turning ourselves into, not that we're completely there, but more of a proactive approach.
Yeah.
At more often, and reducing our response times. I think that will take us to the next level of safety for Calaveras.
Yeah, I would like to see a special enforcement team on every shift.
That'd be nice.
We've been focusing on just getting up to staffing, just filling our open spots over years. So we haven't even been talking about increasing staffing. We just want to fill the spots that we've been allocated.
Right.
So even if we can get that, the special enforcement teams can do those targeted patrols. They can use the crime analysis. They can go after the problem-oriented, where is our hot spots and who are our problem people that we know are committing the crimes, and we just need to be able to prove it. And that's the hardest thing for citizens sometimes, is they're like,
we all know who's doing it.
We all know who do it. But you know what? For us to be able to really to get them held, to get them prosecuted, to keep them behind bars, to comply with California law requirements and everything that it takes to put together prosecutable cases, it takes some dedicated special enforcement. So that's why I'd really like to. We have been focusing on keeping our patrol staffing levels to the point where we can reduce overtime and maintain the level that we need to for optimal community and officer safety. But I'd really like to be able to bolster that with some special enforcement teams. Yeah,
that would make a very, very large impact.
And then other than that, I think the only other thing in the future is just keeping up with the equipment and technology. Like we're going to buy another 4 patrol cars this year. We're getting a new drone. We replace the laptops in the cars. Like we're always moving forward. Everyone's carrying new tasers. We went to the green dot sights, for better sight pictures so our deputies can keep their focus on their target, not their weapon, like always evolving. And there's so much new technology out there. I know you've been in the AI discussions, like, is this good? Is it not? Should we touch it? Do we need to write policies to prevent it? Camera technology, license plate readers. Like there's so many different directions. So we have a whole group of administrators that are constantly reviewing vendors that are out there, that are reviewing what other agencies are doing, what are the industry standards, what policies do we need in place, and just keep pushing our department and, like you used the word contemporary, keeping us up to where we need to be.
That's good, I think, for the listeners to know that we are constantly moving forward and making sure that we are within industry standard, and next 5-10 years, with your sheriff administration pushing that, I'll call it an agenda because it's ongoing.
Yeah.
I think that we're going to be in pretty good shape. Any other closing thoughts before we wrap this up?
I think that's about it. We covered a lot of topics on recruiting, which was the main message we wanted to talk about in this podcast. So I appreciate the opportunity, and you finally got me here.
Yeah, and I hope to, we talked about this before, as critical incidents or debriefings are needed, we can do this again, and hopefully in a couple of years we'll do it where we're talking about, and here's our staffing levels. They're up here, they're up above where we thought they would be, and this is what our special enforcement team's doing.
Yeah, I really like the topics that you've chosen for our podcast so far, and I'm hoping in the future, as topics come up, if there's some hot button topic going on, if there's some debate going on in our community, that we don't have to pre-record these and throw them in the can and release them as we can. Like, you and I can come down here and let's talk about it. And if people want to send us questions or things that they want to hear, we definitely want to expand on this podcast channel and really give your listeners what they want to hear, not what we think they want to hear.
Yeah, good point. It doesn't have to be an hour show. It can be just can you explain this for 10 minutes?
Yeah,
and
we can do that.
We can get it done.
If that's what people want, we can do it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming in. I appreciate it. Excuse me. Thank you for turning in today's episode Behind the Badge. We appreciate your engagement, and I hope you found this information valuable. Remember, your feedback, like we just talked about, on topic suggestions are always welcome as we strive to address issues that matter most to our community. Stay safe, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon.